When you or you students reach back and catch the foot in pigeon, in bow, in dancer's pose, you probably hold that foot the same way each time. You probably hold with a neutral rotation, holding the outside of the foot, or with external rotation, holding the inside of the foot. Both are equally valid ways of doing the pose, and both give you really good benefit to the shoulders. But the best way to do it is to do both, because each one of those hand grips presents a slightly different benefit to the shoulder. Real quick, if you find this content valuable, please like and subscribe. It's really helpful for me. It's really helpful for the channel to continue to grow. And it helps other people find this content, which I think is super helpful. So hit the button, all those good things. Here's the rest of the content. First, a really quick breakdown of the anatomy. When you reach back behind you, you're taking the shoulder into extension. When you reach back behind you and hold the outside of the foot, that arm is reaching back with a neutral rotation. That is not internal rotation. I'll cover that later. So when you reach back and you hold the outside of the foot, you are extending the shoulder with a neutral rotation. When you reach back and hold the inside of the foot, you are also extending that shoulder, but you're doing so with external rotation. These actions are similar, but the nuances are substantial. So when you are holding the outside of the foot with that neutral rotation, you're primarily going to be stretching your anterior deltoids on the front side. You're going to be stretching a little bit of one of the rotator cuff muscles, the supraspinatus. You're going to be putting some stretch into the very top of the biceps and likely the biceps tendon. And if your shoulders are particularly tight, you'll also likely be stretching your pec. What changes when you hold the inside of the foot with external rotation, however, you are still extending the shoulder joint. You are still stretching the anterior deltoids. You're still putting some stretch into that anterior bicep and the supraspinatus, but there's a big difference. When you externally rotate the arm and reach the arm back, you're rolling the head of the humerus bone further away from the center of the chest. And because the pec major is an internal rotator, by externally rotating that arm when you reach back and hold behind you, you're gonna get a much more substantial elongation of the pecs. Also, when you're externally rotating the arm, not only are you contracting or strengthening or engaging the backside, primarily triceps, posterior deltoid, but when you're externally rotating that arm, you're also engaging 2 of the 4 rotator cuff muscles, creating a little bit more activation in the teres minor and also in the infraspinatus. Another thing we want to remember as students and teachers is doing the same technique with slight variance is really good because it diversifies the way in which we're stressing the tissues. So when we're trying to create more malleability and mobility and strength, stability, all the things that we want to do with the shoulders, only doing the pose one way in perpetuity is good. But if we can vary the way that we're doing that pose, it's even better. So this is how I do it, everybody. When I have my students reach back and hold the foot, usually what I'll do is have 2 phases of the same pose, and I'll start and reach back and hold the outside of the foot. When you're extending that shoulder with a more neutral position in that arm, it's less demand on the shoulder, especially when someone has a tight pec. So we reach back and we hold the outside of the foot. Now, typically what I'll do is once I'm holding the outside of the foot, I actually press the foot pretty firmly into the hand and I pull the hand into the foot. So there's a dynamic connection. It's almost like this balanced tug of war. The foot's pressing the hand back, the arms pulling the foot forward. Those 2 are neutrally netting each other out. So there's a good engagement and stretch in the front side. We'll take that for a couple of breaths. And then without letting go of the foot, and I'm gonna talk about this later, without letting go of the foot, we just walk that hand around and hold the inside of the foot with a thumb up grip. So now this is the second phase. Each one of these phases we can hold for several breaths. Once we have that thumb up grip, we've rolled the head of that humerus bone further back, and people are gonna feel an increased elongation in the front of the shoulder and chest, and likely greater engagement of that backside. Because this is a more demanding setup, I usually save it for the second part of the pose. And sometimes you're gonna have students that aren't actually able to hold the inside of that foot with a thumb up grip. That's completely fine. They can still hold the outside of the foot. And of course, for your students that don't have enough flexibility to even hold the foot, you can reach back and hold a belt. So let's look at this real quick in another pose. So here in Ardha Chandra Chapasana, I'm gonna reach back and hold the outside of the foot. I'm extending my shoulder. That's a neutral grip. The foot presses into the hand pulls a little bit into the foot, so we're getting a little bit of dynamic engagement in the muscles that we're stretching. And then after a few breaths, we're gonna keep hold of the foot. We're gonna walk the hand around, not letting go at all. We're gonna hold the inside of that foot with a thumb up grip. Now, we're creating more external rotation into that shoulder and likely a greater elongation of pec. Like I said, we can do this exact same process in bow. You can even reach it back, and same thing in camel. I'm only kind of showing camel. I'm more showing the position of the hand connecting to the foot. But in camel pose, if your hands are on the outside of the feet or the outside of the heels, you have that shoulder extension with a more neutral rotation. That's good, and that's a little bit easier. But if we externally rotate those arms, we're gonna get more of that opening of the chest wall. So what's the best way to do it? Both ways to do it, really. Because again, we're diversifying the demand and we're diversifying the way in which we are stressing those tissues. And also everybody, we're diversifying our attention. So instead of that technique just being rote, right, kind of phoning it in, by having a couple different ways to change that grip, it makes it more dynamic for the mind as well. Real quick before we go, I wanna show you the way to not do this. Now listen, if you or your students do what I'm about to show, it's not a 911 situation. Everyone is gonna survive just fine. It's really not that bad. It's just not as beneficial. You can also reach back and hold that foot with an internally rotated position, okay? So I'm gonna stand up and show it. When you reach back and you hold the outside of the foot over here, that's a neutral rotation. When we reach back and hold the inside of that foot with a thumb up grip, that's an external rotation. But look, sometimes what people will do is they'll reach back with internal rotation. They'll internally rotate, reach back, and catch the foot like this, okay? Now, when that happens, you're just not taking advantage of a very mechanically, functionally valuable way of positioning the arm, shoulder, and joint. I don't think it's a big problem, to be totally frank. Like I said, I don't think you're really at risk for injury. You are at risk for not really refining or optimizing your time. As a student, and even more importantly as a teacher, please use this as one of countless examples to understand it's not about how we should do something. It's about what are we trying to accomplish and understanding that there are multiple ways to do that. There is not a single technique that is right or wrong in most poses. The more educated we are, the less black and white we are, the more we actually understand, oh, there's a range of options that my students and I have at my discretion based on what I'm trying to facilitate. So here's my ask of you. Use this week. Play with this in your own practice. Put this into your classes. You don't have to do all these poses, but you can. Just reach back, catch the outside of that foot, take a few breaths, walk the hand around, hold the inside of the foot, take a few breaths. Notice how it feels in your body. See how it feels in your student's body. And then let me know in the comments below what you have experienced and how you're gonna incorporate this work. As always, thanks a ton for listening. Thanks for sharing this. Please like, subscribe, follow, all that stuff. It helps the channel. Okay, see you soon.